But moving on now, fresh details are exposing the true cost of Operation Epic Fury, and it is far heavier than initially acknowledged. The US Air Force, often seen as unmatched in global air power, is now facing losses running into $2 billion and above, a staggering blow in a conflict that was expected to be swift and decisive. Multiple high-value assets have been hit. Frontline fighter jets, F-15Es and A-10 Warthog. Even reports of damage to cutting-edge F-35 stealth aircraft are now coming in. Platforms that form the backbone of American air dominance. But perhaps the most significant setback is the destruction of AWACS surveillance aircraft in Saudi Arabia. A flying command center that coordinates mission, tracks threat and ensures battlefield superiority. Losing it is not just a tactical hit for the US, it is a strategic one. And the losses do not just stop here. Refueling operations critical for sustained air mission have also taken a hit, with tanker aircraft crashing. Drone warfare, another key pillar of US strategy, is also under pressure, with at least 17 Reaper drones lost since 28th of February when the conflict began. Even rescue missions are no longer safe. Helicopters deployed to evacuate personnel are now being targeted. A sign that the airspace, in fact, is no longer uncontested, because despite sustained US strikes, Iran and its air defense network is still very much alive. A layered system of long-range, medium-range and short-range defense, combined with mobile launchers, shoulder-fired missile, is continuing to challenge one of the most advanced air forces in the world. And that is the big takeaway tonight. This is no longer a one-sided conflict. Despite claims of air superiority, Iran retains the ability to strike back effectively, repeatedly and at scale, which means that this war is not ending anytime soon. In fact, with rising losses and contested skies, the risks are only getting higher, the stakes far more dangerous. Joining me on the show is Major General S.B.S. Thane. He's a defense and strategic expert. Also with us is Adit Kothari, geopolitics and foreign affairs expert. Both, of course, joining us at a time when, gentlemen, a big ultimatum has now come in, General Asthana, from Trump just a short while ago, where he's essentially suggesting if Iran does not agree to a deal, he will unleash hell on Iran, and the deadline ends in 48 hours. What are you making of that threat, sir, on the back of the severity of the losses that the US naval forces have had to face?
A frustrated Trump is trying to convince the Iranian regime in some manner to give in a little more as far as negotiations are concerned, and perhaps attend some kind of negotiation. As far as giving hell is concerned, I think he has done everything possible under the sun to give them hell even now. And all these standoff strikes, if he was expecting that he can win Iran by only standoff strikes, then it is not possible. It was never possible for any military to win only by standoff strikes. But USA launched a strategy of this kind, thinking that that may be possible, but that is not possible. So that's one part of it. Secondly, as far as Iran is concerned, the terms and conditions, those 15 points, they just don't add up to the requirement of Iran. At the same time, the Iranians' 5 points, they are also far too ambitious. There is no way that America is going to pay for the damages and things like that. And also anybody agreeing that they will retain right over Strait of Hormuz. So these are also impractical demands. So both sides, the kind of divergence which is there in both sides, it cannot be bridged in 48 hours, number one. And number two, President Trump has given these ultimatums many times now. The only thing he can do is, which he has done, in fact, that he has been climbing escalation ladder at one step every time. And Iran also has been climbing, in their retaliation, climbing up escalation ladder at one step.
Okay.
So in my opinion, it will finally land up in one more step in escalation ladder, because now US has got a problem that their pilot is not traceable, number one. Number two, anything which he tried out on the Iranian territory is not working out. Ground operation has got tremendous amount of risks. The terrain in Iran doesn't suit the ground operation for the United States. the numbers don't add up. If they've got 6 lakh troops, obviously 50,000 troops of USA cannot do anything.
Right.
Similarly, clearing Strait of Hormuz by force is again a major issue for the reason because you have to clear for US, you have to clear every single island to get the Strait of Hormuz cleared. For Iran, even if they have their presence in 2 islands out of 13, 14, they can still block the Strait of Hormuz. So that is the equation because Iran is fighting a battle of survival and trying to impose cost on the other side, whereas the other side has to be right in every place and has to win every particular contestation to perhaps make a case that they have won. So there is a problem there. So I think I'll leave it at that and take on your further
All
questions.
right, Adit Kothari, how significant are the reported damage to the F-15S and the F-35s? Because the pilot is still untraceable. At the same time, we're looking at significant losses for the US. What was likely to be a 2-week, 3-week long war has now stretched to 5-week, and now perhaps also likely to stretch further to 6th or the 7th week. That is as per the US estimates. We can't believe them. What are you making of how this war where it has come at this point? Perhaps it was an easy win, that's what the US thought, but Iranians are proving to be difficult contenders and difficult fighters.
Shweta, there is no doubt that the Iranians have shown capability far beyond anybody's comprehension. I mean, this is less than 48 hours after Trump declared that, Iran was beaten and completely decimated, and, claiming that, they had no anti-aircraft equipment, their radars were 100% annihilated. All of these claims came in, and then what happens? An F-15 Strike Eagle, was fully shot down over the southwestern part of Iran. 2 crew members ejected, and so because of the trajectory of the ejection, one landed safely, and he was saved, and the other one, the search is still ongoing, and God forbid, if the second pilot or the second member of the crew is somehow found by the Iranians, he's going to be a hostage of war. The Iranians are not going to lose an opportunity to parade him around in the global media to humiliate the Americans and try and get some sort of concessions on the account of that. But besides that, I mean, we've seen how much the Americans have been hit as a consequence. Whether it be the Black Hawk helicopters, whether it be the A-10 Thunderbolts, the American capacity has been decimated. Their sort of unchallenged prowess over air superiority, that myth has been busted by you know a power which was long thought was an absolutely no challenger to the might of the American Air Force. Where this goes from here on, Shweta, is what the dangerous part is. The new reality is that Iran is holding the Strait of Hormuz as hostage, and that is the new norm which has been set from the February 28th onwards. So the Americans and Donald Trump, despite all the chest thumping, just cannot leave and claim victory and decide to go away. The Strait of Hormuz has to go back to status quo prior to February 28th, where the waters were shared between the Omanis, the Bahrainis, and the Iranians, and the GCC countries will have enough say in the Strait of Hormuz to ensure that all of their exports are allowed freely. Because at this point, every vessel that is passing off from the Strait of Hormuz, virtually the RGC is charging anywhere between $1 million to a couple of $1 million, depending on who the beneficiary of that vessel is. So they are really, really funding their weaponry, their arsenal, and their personal pockets also. They're making money out of this at this point, and the GCC countries will not and cannot allow this to go on unchecked. So all in all, the Americans are here to stay for a while. I don't think they're going anywhere for the foreseeable future. Shweta.
That's extremely unfortunate. General Asthana, how significant are these losses? I mean, we're talking about 4 F-15E, a N-10 Warthog, an F-35 Lightning II fighter aircraft, E-3 Sentry AWACS system. We're also talking about multiple refueling aircraft. We're talking about tankers damaged, AWACS damage. How significant are these damages for US Navy? Not just the total economic cost of it, but also the morale for the US Navy and the US forces.
Certainly, in fact, in addition to the cost, More important thing is the reputational cost, which is and reputational setback, which they are getting because of these losses. These losses certainly prove that whatever President Trump was claiming of complete air superiority and their air defense obliterated, those claims were false claims, and it has been proved to the rest of the world. Also, the other option which you would see by when you relate some news in a manner that when it came to ground operations, a lot of generals of American Army, including their army chief, has resigned. Now, this resignation has come up because they saw the impracticality of the plan which these guys have made, and the geography is not there in their favor. Iran's is a much difficult geography. In military language, we call it as a terrain analysis. The terrain is not in their favor. It's a four times larger country than Iraq, uh, two times larger than Afghanistan. It has much bigger mountains, and beyond a point, now they have done a fair amount of standoff attacks and fair amount of shelling by now. Now you see the in the folds of these mountains and in the tunnels below the mountains, whatever they have preserved, that has gotten affected. And this is a reality which they have not been able to comprehend. That with so much of destruction, how is it that the capabilities are still alive? Uh, Whereas that's a statement of fact. The second is the statement of fact is no combat ship has entered of United States from outside into Strait of Hormuz so far.
Right.
Whatever was there was the Fifth Fleet of the Central Command. That's all. None of their aircraft carriers or they may keep claiming that we are sending so many troops and so many etc etc, all those amphibious troops, they are all outside Strait of Hormuz. An entry inside the Strait of Hormuz will be contested, and there is no
But
surprise left.
that could
And
be, you
because,
know, Major General, because perhaps they know it would be harakiri to send troops, to send Marines into Kharg Island, or any part of Iran for that matter. They know how exposed that the Marines are going to be. If they were to send ground troops into Iran, perhaps the US is well aware of the cost of war and how it will escalate beyond the economic cost to the moral cost, and of course the cost on the pride that US takes in its army and navy. So I think all of that is online right now. And you know, that brings me to an important question. These are setbacks for US military, and these are some very crucial setbacks for military, but will they make US perhaps recalibrate its approach? Because when it comes to Donald Trump suggesting that he's won the war, he's done it multiple times in the past few weeks. He's come out saying that we have clearly won this war. While the goalpost keeps shifting on what they wanted to achieve, eliminate the leadership, then perhaps eliminate nuclear capacity, and then also get rid of, IRGC. They haven't been able to do any of that. But Trump claims that the US has firmly won this war. On ground, however, the reality is quite different from the kind of damages that IRGC and the Iranian forces have been able to inflict on the US. Do you believe that this war perhaps is not ending anytime soon?
Sure. I mean,
me,
the war doesn't seem to end. Donald Trump claimed to have engineered a regime change in Iran. I mean, so far, the only regime change that the people across the world can see is probably within America itself. I mean, we've seen from Pam Bondi to, the chief of the army staff,
Right.
as, Major General Asana also pointed out, all of these gentlemen and women being let go. And they're not being let go in a very nice manner. It's a rather humiliating let go at this point, and this is not going to stop with there. We remember Joe Kent, the national security advisor, for God's sake. I mean, he's the guy who provides the president of the United States with all of the intel on terrorism, on national security. He went out saying that the intel that was provided by Mossad and the Israelis was wrong, and that is all that the Americans have acted on. And this is not going to be the end of it all. I mean, we hear that the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and Derime, all of these people are also within the radar of people who are going to be let go because, the president is not happy with the kind of mechanisms that they've provided to the Americans to engineer this particular so-called regime change. Shweta, we've got to think about what was the objective, what was the stated objective of the Americans before they went into this war. The stated objectives were to engineer a regime change. completely decapacitate their military program, their ballistic missile program, and also completely demilitarize their nuclear program.
Right.
They said this last year that they had actually achieved during the 12-day war, they had achieved, completely denuclearizing Iran. So what happened to that? Did you actually lose that? So there is no accountability from that perspective. And I fail to see why the mainstream media in the West is actually not holding them accountable as well. Even the opposition, the Democrats are not holding them accountable. So somewhere or the other, those questionings, those compelling questions now need to be raising on Donald Trump. How effective is your war strategy? How effective are you as the president, as the supreme commander of the U.S. Armed forces?